back to another episode of Learn Japanese from Some Guy. In today's video, we are going to look at chapter 13 of my textbook, where we will learn how to use i and na adjectives. So, if you didn't already know, in Japanese there are two kinds of adjectives, and they can be a little tricky. So, in this video, I'll teach you the differences and how to use one over the other. So, a very useful lesson, and without further ado, hajimarimashou ka. Yoroshiku onegaishimasu. Alright guys, here we are, chapter 13, and like I said today, we're going to be looking at the differences between i and na adjectives. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so before we get into too much detail about our adjectives, I'm just going to give you guys a little overview of how they work. Okay, so the first thing that is important to realize is that in Japanese there are two kinds of adjectives. So they're known as i-adjectives and na-adjectives. Okay, so i-adjectives, as you can imagine, end with the character i. Okay, so they're pretty easy to identify, pretty easy to spot. But na-adjectives do not end in na. Okay, so they can actually end in many different characters. In fact, a na-adjective can end with the i character, and we'll see an example of that later. Okay, so both i and na adjectives serve the exact same purpose, which is, of course, to describe a noun. But the way they're used is actually a little different, and for a beginner can be a little confusing. So by the end of this chapter, hopefully you'll know the differences between the two and you'll be able to use them both correctly. So first, we're going to take a look at our i-adjectives. Okay, so as I mentioned before, i-adjectives are adjectives that end with the i character. Okay, so please be careful, okay? I-adjectives are not necessarily adjectives that end with the Romaji letter I. Okay, so there's a very important difference, and that's why it's so important to be familiar with the kana. Okay, so here we have an example. The word ski, okay, which means love or liking. Okay, so and when we read it and write it in Romaji, it's S-U-K-I. Okay, so you would think that, oh, okay, well, ski is an i adjective, but actually you'd be wrong. So it does end in the letter I in Romaji, but it does not end in the i character. It ends in ki. So there's a huge difference between i and ki. So ki versus I, huge difference. So it's not the same. So actually, ski is a na adjective. Even though it ends in the Romaji character I, it does not end in the hiragana character i. And therefore, it's not an i adjective. It's a na adjective. So anyway, now we're going to look at how to use our i adjectives. Okay, so it's very simple. If you're a native English speaker, then you'll have no problem. You know, the adjective goes before the noun that it's describing, usually. So here we have an example. The i adjective will be highlighted in orange, and the noun will be highlighted in red. And please notice that in these example sentences, the noun and the adjective are next to each other. Okay? So number one, we have watashi wa aoi shatsu wo kaimasu. Watashi wa aoi shatsu wo kaimasu. I will buy a blue shirt. So aoi is the i adjective for blue, and shatsu is the katakana word for shirt. Aoi shatsu, blue shirt. And number two, kono shiroi candy wa oishii desu. Kono shiroi candy wa oishii desu. This white candy is delicious. So here we have the word for white, shiroi, the i adjective, shiroi. And number three, watashi wa yasashii hito ga suki desu. Watashi wa yasashii hito ga suki desu. I like nice people. So yasashii is the i adjective meaning nice. Yasashii hito, nice people, nice person. And number four, kare wa muzukashii geimu ga suki desu. Kare wa muzukashii geimu ga suki desu. He likes difficult games. So muzukashi means difficult, and game is the katakana word for game. So it usually means maybe a video game. Muzukashi game. And number five, sono chisai inu wa kawaii desu. Sono chisai inu wa kawaii desu. That small dog is cute. Chisai inu, small dog. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at another way to use i-adjectives. Okay, so this time the i-adjective and the noun will be separated. They're not going to be next to each other. Okay, they'll have either wa or ga separating them. So here's what our structure will look like. We'll have noun, wa or ga, i-adjective, and des. So number 1, これはおいしいです。これはおいしいです。This is delicious. Okay, so please notice that the noun and the adjective are separated, so we can describe これ, this thing, as being delicious. これはおいしい. And number 2, 私のシャツは青いです。私のシャツは青いです。My shirt is blue. Number 3, このゲームは難しいです。このゲームは難しいです。This game is difficult. And number 4, 日本語は楽しいです。日本語は楽しいです。Japanese is fun. And number 5, その漫画は面白いです。その漫画は面白いです。That manga is cool. That manga is interesting. And here we have a pro tip, number 9, we can check out. Discussing the word 面白い. Okay, so if you were to look in the dictionary, if you were to look up the word 面白い in the dictionary, it would probably be translated as, interesting. Okay, but the way it's used in Japanese does not always translate to what we would describe as interesting in English. So in Japanese, people often say 面白い when they want to say something is cool or amazing or fantastic. So here I have an example sentence. その映画は面白い. So, that movie is interesting. That you would never really say that. So you say, oh, that movie's amazing. That movie's great. That movie's really, I want to see it. 面白い. So a really, really good word you can add to your vocabulary. 面白い. People use it all the time. All right, and moving on. Now we're going to look at our na-adjectives. So i-adjectives are pretty easy. Okay, so na-adjectives are a little more difficult. So we'll take it a little slower. Okay, so like you'd expect, na-adjectives are used just like i-adjectives to describe a noun. But the way we describe a noun with a na-adjective is a little different. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, na-adjectives do not end with the na character. But why are they called na-adjectives then? Okay, the reason is when we use a na-adjective to describe a noun, we have to add na ourselves. Okay, so it's not part of the word, but we have to throw it in there to connect the noun and the adjective. So we'll look at some examples, but here we have just a list of some na-adjectives. So the first one we have is kirei, okay, which means pretty or beautiful. Okay, so here we have a pro tip, so let's learn a little bit about kirei. Okay, so the first adjective in our na-adjective list is a special one. Okay, so kirei, as you can see, ends with the e character, but it is not an e-adjective. It is a na-adjective. So you might be a little confused, why is that? Well, the reason is because kirei can be written in kanji, and when it's written out in kanji, it looks like this. Okay, so you will rarely see kirei written in kanji like this because, as you can see, it's a little difficult to write, a little difficult even maybe to read. So in hiragana, it ends with the e character, but the kanji form does not end with e. So if you look at another word like that we saw earlier, aoi or shiroi, takai, we have a kanji character and then an e character, aoi, takai. So these characters are e-adjectives because after the kanji character we have an e character, but kirei has no e character after it. The e is included in the kanji. So that's why it's an e-adjective and not a na-adjective. So you'll just have to commit this little strange thing to memory, but it's really easy. Often we use the word kirei, so you'll know it's kirei, not something. All right, anyway, now let's go back to our other adjectives. So we have hen, which means something is strange or weird. Benri means something is convenient or useful. Taihen, dreadful or really bad, really awful. Fuben, inconvenient. So please notice here we have benri, which means convenient, and fuben, which means inconvenient. The ben character is the exact same. So fu is a character that means not or no. Kind of like in English how we have prefixes like im or un. So fuben means not convenient. And the last one we have is shizuka. Shizuka means quiet. All right, so now let's see some of our na-adjectives in action. Okay, so here we have some example sentences. So our structure is going to look something like this. We have the subject, wa, na-adjective, the character na, and a noun. So please notice the na-adjective is underlined in blue, the noun in red. So number one, これはきれいな絵です。これはきれいな絵です。This is a pretty picture. This is a pretty painting. Okay, so please notice we have きれい, which means pretty, 絵, which means picture, but we have to have na. We cannot say きれい絵です. That's grammatically that's wrong. So きれいな絵. Number two, 私は変な人ではないです。私は変な人ではないです。I am not a strange person. So 変な人. Number three, これは便利な道具です。これは便利な道具です。This is a useful tool. This is a really convenient tool. Number four, それは大変な状況です。それは大変な状況です。That is a difficult, terrible, horrible situation. 大変な状況. And number five, それは不便な時間です。それは不便な時間です。That is an inconvenient time. And number six, 長崎は静かな町ではないです。長崎は静かな町ではないです。Nagasaki is not a quiet city. So 静かな町。不便な時間。大変な状況. So with our na-adjectives, we need to include na when they're connecting to the noun. When the noun and the na-adjective are adjacent, they need to have na. But just like with our i-adjectives, the noun and the adjective don't have to appear next to each other. Okay, so, and in this case, when the noun and the na-adjective are not next to each other, but maybe separated by wa or ga, we do not use na in this case. So it works very similarly to an i-adjective. So number one, この絵はきれいです。この絵はきれいです. Okay, so please notice we do not use na in this sentence. In the previous example, we had これはきれいな絵です. But here, the noun and the na-adjective are separated, so we don't need na. Number two, 私は変ではないです。私は変ではないです. I am not strange. Number three, この道具は便利です。この道具は便利です. This tool is useful. Number four, その状況は大変です。その状況は大変です. That situation is terrible. That situation is dangerous, awful. Number five, その時間は不便です。その時間は不便です. That time is inconvenient. And number six, 長崎は静かではないです。長崎は静かではないです. Nagasaki is not quiet. Nagasaki is not a calm place. So please notice that numbers 1 to 6 that we just saw are very similar to the sentences we saw above, except the order of the sentence, the structure of the sentence is a little different. And because the noun and the na-adjective are separated, we do not need na. Only when they are adjacent do we use na. So please remember. All right, so now we're going to test our knowledge of i and na-adjectives with some practice problems. Okay, so we're going to fill in the following sentences with the given i and na-adjectives. Please notice the i-adjectives will be underlined in orange and the na-adjectives underlined in blue, so they're easy to see. And remember that sometimes you may have to add or append na. Sometimes you don't have to. Okay, so let's look at number one. So pause the video now, answer that. Okay, and here we have some more. Pause the video, answer those. Okay, I'm assuming you've answered them. And here we have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Pause the video, answer those. Okay, I'm assuming you've answered those. And we have 2 more, 11 and 12. Pause the video and answer those. Okay, so I'm assuming you've answered all the questions. Now let's check our answers. Okay, here we are. Number one, 彼女はきれいです. 彼女はきれいです. She is pretty. She is beautiful. So please notice that even though it's a na-adjective, we don't use na in this sentence because 彼女 is being separated by wa from きれい. Number two, あなたは変な人です. あなたは変な人です. You are a strange person. You are a weird person. So please notice we have na, hen, na, hito. Number 3, この映画はつまらないです。この映画はつまらないです。This movie is boring. つまらない. So here we have an e adjective, and we just have it just like that. No change. Number 4, この携帯電話はとても便利です。この携帯電話はとても便利です。This cell phone is very useful. And this word right here, とても, is a very good word to learn because it's a good way to, express a strong feeling. It's like very or really. とても便利. Really convenient. とても. And number 5, これはきれいな絵です。これはきれいな絵です。This is a beautiful picture. So because きれい and 絵 are next to each other, we need な。きれいな絵です。Number 6, 私は辛い食べ物が好きです。私は辛い食べ物が好きです。I like spicy food. Actually, I hate spicy food. I don't like spicy food at all. 私は辛い食べ物は好きではない。Number 7, この絵は変です。この絵は変です。This picture is strange. So please notice we have no na. Number 8, このシャツは高いです。このシャツは高いです。Okay, so some of you might be a little confused by this sentence right here. Takai means high, or tall. So what does that mean? The shirt is tall. The shirt is high. But actually, when we talk about an item and we describe it as being takai, it means expensive. The price is high. このシャツは高いです. This shirt is expensive. So takai is a good word to know if you want to describe, if you go shopping and you can say, takai. It's expensive. And the opposite is yasui, means cheap. Yasui. So you have takai and yasui. Anyway, moving back to our problems. Number 9. これは便利な携帯電話です。これは便利な携帯電話です。This is a useful cell phone. Please notice we have 便利な携帯電話. And number 10. 東京は静かな街ではない。東京は静かな街ではない。Tokyo is not a quiet city. 静かな街. Quiet town. Not a quiet town. Number 11. 長崎は静かではないです。長崎は静かではないです。So Nagasaki is not quiet. So please notice in this sentence, number 11, we don't use na. And number 12, the last one, 彼女は優しいです。彼女は優しいです。She is nice. All right, that's going to do it for today. But before we finish this chapter, let's recap what we learned. So first, we learned that i-adjectives do not require any kind of modification when they describe a noun. We just leave them as they are. We also learned that i-adjectives may appear at the end of sentences without directly modifying a noun. So you can have the noun and separated by wa or ga, and then have the adjective at the end, no problem. We also learned that na-adjectives, when followed by a noun, must be appended with na. So we cannot say hen hito with the hen na hito. And we also learned that na-adjectives may modify a noun if they don't appear next to each other. So we, just like before with our i-adjectives, we can have noun, wa, na-adjective, and we don't need na. And finally, I know I've said this a couple times, but knowing how to read kana and kanji will make Japanese so much easier and so much more fun, just like we saw with kire. So, you might have been confused as to why kire is not an i-adjective, but if you know a little about kanji, it kind of starts to make more sense. So, if kana, hiragana, katakana is still a little difficult for you, remember, make those flashcards, study at home, and it'll make learning Japanese a lot easier and, a lot more omoshiroi, a lot more interesting, a lot more fun. All right, so anyway, now next time we're going to look at chapter 14, okay? And in this chapter, we're going to learn how to use wo with verbs. Okay, so we saw a little bit how to use wo earlier in this series, but now we're going to start using it more with verbs and objects, and we're going to start making a lot more complex sentences. So after this lesson, your Japanese will definitely be, will have taken off and will definitely improve a lot. So be sure to check back next Friday for the video on that, and we'll see you then. Thanks for watching. Alright guys, that's going to do it for today's video. Thank you very much for watching. Remember, if you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, and follow me on Facebook so you can see what's going on there. If you have a friend, let them know. Remember, my book's still available on Amazon. You can check that out. And remember, be sure to check back next Friday where we're going to look at chapter 14 and learn how to use with verbs. So now our sentences are going to get even more exciting, lots of action with our verbs. So be sure to check that out, and we'll see you guys next time.